Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you all. Hope everybody is doing well. We are starting a brand new chapter in Tanya today. Perek Lamed, chapter 30. The Alter Rebbe is about to introduce a new remedy for Timtum Halev. Timtum Halev is the indifference of the heart, the lack of emotional reaction in the heart to the contemplation of the mind. To go way back to the beginning, the Alter Rebbe's whole Alter Rebbe's whole novel approach in Judaism, what he brought to the table after the Baal Shem Tov introduced an emotional, innocent attachment to God, the Alter Rebbe introduced the intellectual aspect of it, the idea that a person with his own mind or with her own mind and with enough reflection and with enough thought can stir himself or herself to love of God, to love Hashem, to love mitzvahs. And so the Alter Rebbe is discussing this, how to generate love using your mind. And one of the issues that arises is the despondency, the unhappiness that results when you think that you have failed. Alter Rebbe discussed that, how to maintain joy in life as a Jew. And in the last chapter, he said that when your mind reflects on certain matters, in other words, you get it, you understand the issue, you understand the greatness of Hashem or the greatness of a mitzvah, and yet your heart is totally not into it. So it's not succeeded. The intellectual contemplation, the reflection, has not given birth to the proper feelings, which of course that's a human being, a person who has not just the right ideas, but the right feelings, and it hasn't happened. So in chapter 29, the Alter Rebbe gave certain remedies, certain prescriptions on how to go about it, how to continue to use your mind to stir your mind by humbling yourself, by lecturing yourself. Now in chapter 30, the Alter Rebbe says that another way to humble your mind so that it will, so another way to humble your heart so that it will respond to the convictions of your mind is to develop a sense of humility for people, to develop a sense of modesty that whomever you meet, you feel humble in their presence. And by developing that kind of a social feeling that you find yourself able to be humbled by any person, you will inevitably humble the cold arrogance of your own heart that refuses to care about what you know is important. So here we go in chapter 30. One who suffers from Timtum Halev should also pay attention to the following. To decide to fulfill the instruction that is written in the Talmud of the sages. The sages, the Jewish sages, write in Pirkei Avot, in the chapter of the fathers, have a shval ruach b'fnei kol ha'adam. That a person should feel lowly, a person should feel humbled in front of every person. And this is not the traditional understanding of humility is a sense of respect, admiration, but not a sense that I am worse than everybody. Traditionally, that is not the understanding of humility. Humility doesn't mean that I'm less or I'm worse. Humility just means that I do not worship the ground that I walk on, and I know that I can do better. And when I see other people and their accomplishments, I compare myself and I say, I can do better. I have to do better. Because of the gifts that God has given me, I can do better. In other words, because of my own awareness, of my own gifts, of my own skills, I'm not in denial. I'm not pretending not to know that I have gifts. I'm just acknowledging the fact that considering the gifts Hashem has given me, I can do better. But that's not what the Alter Rebbe is saying. It's not what the Mishnah is saying here. The Mishnah is saying that you should be shval ruach before all people. Shval ruach means to feel like they are greater than you. And how could a person feel that way if he's not in the presence of great people? How could I feel that way? The Mishnah says in front of every person, no matter whom you meet, you should have the sense that they are better than you, that they're greater than you. A true humility of spirit. But how could that be possible in front of all people? There are people that you cannot possibly feel, at least not sincerely, that they are greater than you. And yet the Mishnah preaches that and says, "Have a shval ruach b'fnei kol adam," that you should be humbled, feel humble and lowly before all people. The Heve be'emes la'amita, the Alter Rebbe says, comments on this Mishnah, that the Mishnah is not instructing you to behave, merely to behave humbly, but rather to actually feel that way. B'fnei kol adam mamish, before all people. That means afilu b'fnei kal shebekalim. That means even when you are standing in the presence of somebody, that you look at this person and you say, this person is a kal shebekalim. This is a Talmudic expression, kal shebekalim. And a kal is a person that doesn't take life seriously. A person who's a joker, a person who's very materialistic. And kal shebekalim means the worst of them, the most materialistic of materialistic people, the most irreverent of irreverent people, the lowest of the low, as far as people go, called kal shebekalim. And the Alter Rebbe is saying that apparently the Mishnah is preaching that every person should feel a sense of humility and a sense of lowliness, even in the presence of a person that could be called kal shebekalim. How could it be? So before the Alter Rebbe explains how such a authentic feeling could be possible, let's just reiterate again why the Alter Rebbe is preaching this. The Alter Rebbe is giving advice to people that are suffering from indifference, that are suffering from emotional indifference. So these are people that in their mind, they know what's important, they understand in life what's important, what should be priorities. In their minds, they have all their priorities in order, but their emotions are totally unresponsive. And that leads to, first of all, an inner conflict where your mind is going up and your heart is yearning to go further down. Your mind is yearning for something higher, and the heart is only interested in self-satisfaction. And secondly, it leads to a very crass kind of a feeling that a person carries around with himself all day, that he doesn't care about what's right and wrong. He only cares about himself and what feels good and what's gonna give him pleasure, because although his mind is telling him that that's wrong, but deep down inside, he doesn't care. And so that's a very, very unhappy situation. So this person, whoever this anonymous person coming to ask Alter Rebbe for advice and counsel and guidance, this is the problem, indifference. So the Rebbe is saying that one of the solutions to indifference is to shock yourself into the realization that you have no right to be indifferent. To shake yourself up to the realization that you got to wake up and start taking your life seriously. Even your feelings, even your heart has to wake up and acknowledge the truth about what's important and what's not important. So where previously he was preaching that you can humble your indifferent spirit by reminding it about Hashem's greatness and the greatness of your own godly soul, here he's saying you are surrounded by people. The world is full of people. You are surrounded by people that can be reminders about how absurd your own arrogance is. How could you presume to think that you are greater than everyone and everything, and therefore there is no need for you to react with any kind of excitement about Hashem and about Torah and about mitzvahs. And, you have this kind of a conceit that makes you immune to any admonishment, any kind of encouragement to take things seriously. But when you humble yourself, basically you're saying, who are you to think like that? And this is not a recipe that could be used, God forbid, against other people. This is a recipe that Alter Rebbe is prescribing for us to use for ourselves, that a person should use this way of thinking for himself, in the privacy of his own consciousness, in the privacy of our own minds. We should constantly be humbling ourselves and saying to ourselves, who do I think I am to be so conceited, to scoff and to mock anything that comes our way that smacks of taking life seriously. Who are you? Are you some kind of a world hero? Are you like the greatest person in the world? Instead, Alter Rebbe says, remind yourself and educate yourself to feel that everyone around you is doing better than you. And that's extreme. And it could make a person feel very lowly, but it's a temporary measure. You're supposed to make yourself feel very lowly because then the conceit dies. The arrogance doesn't have any oxygen once a person realizes how absurd the arrogance is, how empty and how void the whole attitude is. Based on what do I presume to be greater than everything that everyone says is important? So the Alter Rebbe is saying, look at anyone, and use your own power of deduction to figure out how that person leaves you feeling humble. Even a kal shebekalim. How could it be that a person should feel humble in front of a kal shebekalim? So now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it, and this is one of the most beautiful entries in Tanya, in my opinion. But how you knew this is possible, based on what it says in the Talmud, you can't judge a person until you have stood in his place. An English expression is, don't judge a person until you have stood in his shoes, until you have walked in his shoes. But in the original, the Talmudic expression, the Mishnah, says, don't judge a person until you have stood in his place, until you have experienced life from his vantage point. What is the significance of the word his place? The Rebbe explains that when you judge somebody for their misbehavior, you have to take into consideration that the place that they find themselves in their life may very well be the reason for their misbehavior. It means literally the places that they'll have to go, that may be places that you don't have to go. For example, let's say you have a Torah scholar who sits in the shul and learns Torah all day and looks and sees people scurrying about, acting very materialistic, people that are out in the world, and he becomes judgmental. And he says, why aren't you being more God-fearing, more reverential of God and more respectful of spiritual matters? Why are you so materialistic? So the Mishnah says you can't judge that person because you are not in his place. Here you have a person whose livelihood demands that he go out into the market, be out in the perhaps the lowest parts of society, and has to engage with people who, quote unquote, sit at the street corner. In other words, people that are not necessarily quality individuals. And here, this guy has to go and do business with all these people. And because he goes to all types of places where he perhaps wouldn't go if he didn't have to go there to make a living, so his eyes are treated to all kinds of temptations. And what the eye see, the heart wants. And that causes that his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination, may be a roaring fire, like a baker's fiery oven. As they have this line from the Torah, a person's heart that burns like a flaming fire. As opposed to a person who hardly ever has to go out into the world. Instead, he works from home. He spends most of his day at home, and therefore he encounters less temptation. So how could that person make a judgment about somebody who's in an entirely different environment and in an entirely different surroundings, and you're going to make a judgment that that person is not behaving the way you would expect him to behave? You don't know what he's going through. You don't know what he's struggling with. And as the Alter Rebbe will go on to continue to say in a little bit, that actually, little do you know, that person may be doing incredibly well considering the tests that he faces all the time. And you, who are never faced with almost any tests, are casting judgment, and he's actually fighting harder for Hashem than you are because of all of the struggles that he faces. So you see his failings, but you don't see his successes. And that's because you don't know what's happening inside his mind. You don't know what's happening inside his heart. You have no idea what his batting average is. You don't know how many times he has resisted temptation, because you don't even know what temptation means. So therefore, you are in no position to make a judgment. And therefore, you are in no position to say that that person is lower than you. For the same price, you could make the presumption that he's doing better than you, considering where he has to go and what he has to see and what he has to engage with. He's doing better than you, and you could become humble in his presence. That how could it be that a person who is surrounded by challenges all the time is doing as well as this guy is doing? Suddenly the whole picture is flipped, and instead of being judgmental and critical, you find yourself actually admiring the person for not being worse than he already is. So that's just the glimmer of what Alter Rebbe is going to say in this chapter, how people can avoid feeling superior to other people, which leads to a sense of false arrogance and conceit, which leads to this delusion that I don't care about anything and I don't have to care about anything, and nothing matters to me because I'm so great and I'm so special, and therefore I don't have to react to anything that other people are reacting to. So as we continue in this chapter, Alter Rebbe will teach more and more about this beautiful idea of seeing the best in everybody that you encounter, and assuming and guessing only positive things about the people around you, while the only person that you actually know, the only person that you can actually judge, because that's the only person whose condition and environment you are actually familiar with, is yourself. And yet you find yourself being very kind in judgment of yourself and very harsh in judgment of others whom you are in no position to judge. It's ironic. So this is a little taste of chapter 30, what we're going to be talking about over the next, God willing, over the next few weeks, how to humble the out of control arrogance of the animal soul by finding beauty and wonder in the people around you, all the people around you, even the ones that you would never have expected to be humbled by. That's today's portion. So God willing, we'll see you next Wednesday at 12 o'clock to continue the marvelous chapter 30 of the Alter Rebbe Tanya. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a very, very good day.